to do. Let's get some sound effects first. So in the Finder, I've got my game project folder here, and I'm gonna make a new folder for audio. So I'm just gonna make a new folder and call this audio. And any audio that you are gonna use, you can just throw in there. So we'll download some stuff and then we'll put it in there. So there's lots of different places to get sounds. I'm gonna go through three ones that I use a lot, but you know, there's different places that you may want to use, and if you have places that you've used before, that's fine. Just make sure that you know the sound that you're using you have license to use, so stuff that's either public domain or Creative Commons or has some other license that you have access to. One site that's really useful for creating sounds is a site called JFXer. This is a web-based program that's based on another program that is the same thing, but it's not web-based. But anyway, this is a website where you can just generate sounds, and it's designed for sort of 8-bit style video game sounds. There's a lot of different parameters that you can play with. I'm not going to go over all of them, obviously. We don't have time to do that. But the easiest way to get started is there's like a bunch of sort of default sound styles, and you can click on them and it'll generate randomized versions of that. So one of the sounds that we're going to want to add is definitely a jump sound for our character. And so if we click a jump sound, usually it plays. Maybe I need the audio to turn up a little bit. Okay, so usually it plays when I click here, but I guess I have to hit this. But anyway, so you can hit jump and you'll get different versions of jump sounds. I kind of like this one. And if you get a sound that you like, there's also this mutate button, so you can get like different versions of it. So it'll take the sound that you're selected, and then it'll create mutation, so it'll randomize certain parameters. So if it's like close, but it's not quite right, you could try mutating it. So that's kind of cool. Sometimes it doesn't quite work, so I'm just gonna hit undo. Okay. There's also a bunch of parameters here, like you can change the frequency, the waveform, so you'll get different wave qualities. So you can play around with all those different things. If you want to know more about the specifics, I can go over it, but for now I'm just gonna kind of do a quick example. And then once you've got a sound you like, you just click the export button here, and that will export. Let's open my downloads folder. So I'm gonna make a new little window and go to downloads. That's gonna export a little wave file that looks like this. And we can import that into Godot. So a wave file is good for smaller sound files. This is only 17 kilobytes, which is a decent file size, but it's also only 0 seconds long. So if you have longer sound files, they're gonna take up more space on the computer. You don't want to have like really gigantic sound files. If you have a sound file that's like more than a couple megabytes, depending on what you're using it for, you probably don't want it to be bigger than a megabyte or two. All right, so we can generate lots of different sounds here. Let's make a sound for when we collect an item. So I'm gonna do like a pickup sound. Okay, that's kind of a nice one. I might want to add a little noise to that. Too much. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'll export that one. And so now I've got a little pickup coin sound as well. you can do lots of fun stuff with this. This is also a good thing for like little scene transitions. Like if I want a scene transition, I can just use the random button and kind of like get different random sounds, and you can find some cool stuff. Although this will take a little bit longer because they are like completely random. That might be good if you have kind of like a scary game and you want a little scary transition sound. Okay, that's a little high frequency. Sorry about that. Okay. This one might be good if I make it a little shorter and lower frequency. Okay, that's kind of cool. I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll just go with this and use this as my... I'll just play this sound at the beginning of the level. So I'm going to export this. And this is going to be named random. So just so I don't forget what this is, I'm going to call this level 1 start. So I'll remember what I want to use that for. Okay, so that's JFXer. This is, you know, it's a good tool for just generating video game sounds. If you want sounds that sound like real things, that are recordings, a good website to use is freesound.org. This sound is free, obviously. The only thing you have to do is log in. So you have to create an account to be able to download a sound. You can preview sounds, but you can't download sounds unless you have an account. So I'm going to add like a little apple into my game later. And so maybe I want like an apple bite sound to play. And so I'll look that up and I'll see if I can find a good one. Okay, it's a little more detailed than I might want, but it's pretty good. You can also search by license on here. So this is a attribution license. You can see the little person there means attribution. That just means that you have to, you know, give credit to the person who created the sound. So you can filter by license. Let's say you only want Creative Commons 0 because you don't want to have to give attribution to anybody. I could filter by Creative Commons 0. This means I can just use it. I don't have to do anything. And maybe I can get a sound here. That's not very good. Okay, this one's pretty good. Okay, I'm just gonna use this. It's not my favorite, but it'll work. So we can download this sound here. And this one, when you download stuff from Freesound, has these like really long names where it has like a number and then the user and then the name of the sound. So it kind of looks weird, but it does make it easier to find later. You could change the name if you want, but I'm just gonna leave that as is. But yeah, we'll use that as our apple bite sound. With Freesound, you might need to edit the sound. So I'm sure you guys have used Audacity before. That's what I would recommend. If you want to edit something, I would just context click and open it with Audacity. I'm just going to do this real quick, just as a quick example. Let's skip this. So there's a couple things that will be helpful in Audacity. So let's play this back. Oh, it's only playing off my computer, so I'll turn it up a little bit. Oh, I can't. All right. You'll hear it once I export it. So I want to cut off the end, so I'm just going to select this part and then hit delete. And then if you do that, you don't want to leave those like little clips at the end of a sound because it's going to sound really bad in the game engine. So what you want to do is just take the very end of the sound and go to Effect and Fade Out. Same thing if you cut the beginning. So if I make a cut here to make the sound shorter, just take a little bit of the sound at the beginning and do a fade in. So that way you won't have like harsh breaks at the ends of each side of the in and out. Okay, that's pretty good. I might want even less up here. So I'll just fade in this part. Okay, that's pretty good. The other thing that you might want to do if the sound is quiet double click and select the whole sound and go to effect and go to volume and compression and go to normalize. This is just gonna increase the volume, but it's gonna do it in a way where it's relative to the sound recording. So it'll bring everything either up or down depending on where it is. And you can usually -1 dB is a good place to normalize it to, so it won't be crazy loud. So I'll just hit apply. You can see the waveform got a little bit bigger. It's a little bit louder. And now I'm just gonna export this. So I'm gonna go to export audio. I'm gonna export to computer. And then I have to find, or I could just save it where the downloads are. And then you can choose, WAV or MP3. You could also use OGG. OGG is another format that Godot will work with, but WAV or MP3 is perfectly fine. I'm gonna go with WAV, and I'll export this. And it says it already exists. Do I want to replace it? I'm gonna say no. I'm just gonna call this Apple, and so I won't overwrite the original one. Okay, you don't have to do that, but just a quick little, overview if you want to edit in Audacity. Okay, so now I have an Apple sound. Now let's get some background music. So I'm gonna go back to Chrome, and a good website for getting music is Free Music Archive. This is similar to Free Sound, except it focuses on music. You also have to have a login here. It seems like every time I go to this website, it's a little bit different. So let's see what it looks like. The thing that I do like about this site is the way that it organizes stuff. It organizes music by genre. So if you have a specific genre that you're aiming for, it's very easy to find something if the website is loading, which it doesn't seem to be. Okay, while that's going, there are a bunch of other places to look at for sound. You could go to Open Game Art is a good one. This has a lot of visual assets, but it also has sound. So if you go to browse, there's sound effects and music. You might be able to find some music that you like here. They also have different tags and search. I thought they had some. They don't have any genres. Let's see if this is working. Okay, let's see. Okay, this website works. Hey. Okay, this doesn't seem to be loading. So let's just use something from Open Game Art for right now. Let's see, Crystal Cave, that sounds kind of exciting. Let's listen to that. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's just download this just so we have something to use in our example. And I'll go back to Free Music Archive later, see if it'll start loading. Okay, let's download this song. So this is an MP3 file. And if I click on this, it'll probably open up, it just downloads. Okay, so that's song 18. Okay, so notice that song 18 is an MP3 file, and it's 50 seconds long, and it's 500 kilobytes. So it's much, much bigger than a sound effects, even though an MP3 file is a more compressed sound format than a WAV file, but it's longer, and so there's more data. And so 500 kilobytes is fine, but if it was like 10 megabytes, then I would start to worry that it was too big. But something between, for most music, it's probably going to be somewhere in the hundreds of kilobytes up to like 1, 2, 3 megabytes, something like that. Just take a look at the file size and make sure it's not too crazy. So 500 kilobytes is fine. Okay, so I've got some sounds to use. Let's go over and put them into Godot. So I'm just gonna grab all of these guys and I'm gonna put them in this audio folder that I created. And I'll throw this guy over here for now. So I've got my Apple sound, my jump sound, my level 1 start sound, my pickup sound, and my song. There's a lot more sounds that I need in the game, but we're just gonna get started with those. When I go to Godot, we're gonna see this new audio folder that I created. And if we open this up, we'll see these sound files. Godot has different defaults for how it imports files based on the file type. And luckily for us, those roughly match what we want to use the sounds for. But sometimes they don't. If you're using an MP3 for a sound effect, you might want to change the way that the file plays. The way to do that is in this import tab up here. So we haven't looked at this yet, but it's next to the scene tab, and the import tab basically just tells us different things about the files. So if I go to import with this apple selected, you can see it's imported as a wave, which is what I want. And then it's got some properties. So if we drag this guy down, we can see some of the properties. The loop mode is set to detect from wave. We can set that to different settings, but detect from wave is going to be fine. The compress mode is set to disabled because we don't really expect our wave file to be that big, but it can be very big, so be careful with that. You can set some other things, but as I mentioned before, the presets that they have are pretty much what we want, so that's fine. If we click on an MP3 file, you'll see there's slightly different presets. There's a loop setting, so this means that if we play this sound, it'll loop. If you have a song that you want to loop as long as you're playing a level, then you want to turn that on. Once you turn that on, you just click re-import, and now it'll be able to loop that sound. The rest of this stuff we can basically ignore, but that's the main thing that you may want to look for with your sound. With our background music, you might want it to loop. Pretty much all the rest of your sound effects you don't want to loop. All right, so now let's add some sounds into our scene. I'll go back to the scene view. I'm gonna collapse the tiles and the player, and I'm gonna go to level 1, and I'm just gonna add a little node 2D folder node for my sounds. So I'll call this audio. And any sounds that I wanna play for this scene, I'll just put in here. So they're not associated with like an event, they're just associated with this scene. So I had that like level 1 start sound, and I have the song 18. So I want to play the level 1 start when the level starts, and then I want to play song 18 in the background as long as the level is running. So to add a sound, any questions on any of the importing stuff before we add the sound? What? In the import tab here.
Question on the preset thing, and I don't see like the option for MP3 or anything.
The preset thing?
Yeah, like the part where it says MP3 up there, I don't see it here. Like I don't have an option to click that.
Yeah, it just says
Oh, because this is an image.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you go.
So you'll see different options depending on what type of file you have.
Okay.
So if you're clicking on an image, you'll see import options for the image.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine, because it's a wave. You don't have to do anything. I was just showing where this is, but the defaults are fine for that. Yeah, so you can just leave it as is. You can, with a wave file, it doesn't have a loop option. That's for MP3. Yeah. All right. So to add our sounds in here, I'm going to go to my audio node, and I'm going to add an audio stream player. There's 2 different types of audio stream players, or actually there's 3. There's the regular audio stream player. This is non-positional. It just plays the audio the same volume no matter where your character is. Audio stream 2D and 3D are positional, meaning it'll change the volume of the audio if it's farther away from the player or whatever the listener in the scene is. For these sounds, these are just background sounds, so I'm gonna just use the audio stream player, just the generic one. So I'm gonna create this guy, and I'm gonna call this level 1 start. And all I have to do to add the sound in there is just drop the sound into the stream parameter, the first parameter in the audio stream player. So I can drag it over there and just throw it in like that. Or I can go to empty and go to load and go to audio and open that stream player. So to get that to actually play, there's a couple of things that we want to do. First, we want to autoplay. So I want this sound to just play automatically when the scene launches. So I'm going to turn on autoplay. And then we want to we can play with the volume. I might turn it down a little bit. When we're working with volume, 0 typically means the loudest. You can go above 0, but you really shouldn't. We should always just go lower than 0. So we don't really want anything above 0. If we want something to be quiet, we go negative. So I'm going to start with -12 for this sound effect. And we'll see how it sounds, and then we can work on the audio mix. And since this is just a generic audio stream player, there's some parameters with the positional stream player that this doesn't have. So that's all we need to set here. Just change the volume and the autoplay. So I'm going to run the scene, and we should hear that sound. So there we go. Pretty exciting. So let's add our background music. So I'm just going to duplicate this audio stream player rather than adding another one. So I'm just going to hit Command D, and I'm just going to call this background music. And I'm going to reset the stream, and then I'll just load audio and song 18. And then I'm going to set this volume even lower. I'm going to set it to -24. I want the background music to be quiet in the background. And autoplay stays on, and everything else I leave the same. So I'm going to run this. Okay, so we hear some background music. It's quiet, which is good. We don't want the background music to overwhelm the sound effects. And hopefully it'll loop. It's only 50 seconds long, so it won't take that long to find out if it does. And hopefully we won't be able to hear when it restarts. Okay, I feel like it's probably been 50 seconds. Anyway, let's stop there, and we'll see if it doesn't work later. Anyway, so those are our level sounds. So we just add in the audio stream player, connect the stream to the file that we want, and then set the volume that we want. So the other sounds, the sound effects, we need to add to our different components. So we have a jump sound. I'm going to go over this real quick, and then we'll do another thing. So for my player, I want a sound that will play when the player jumps, and this is going to be triggered by the script. So if we click on the script, it's going to, if we look through here, we're going to see instances of sounds. I should actually write what to add up here at the top, but I haven't done that. So let's look through and see if we can find some sound examples. Okay. So in the script, you'll see stuff like this. Let me find the jump one. Okay, here's the jump sound. And there's actually a land sound also. I forgot to record that, but let's add that later. So there's a jump sound here. So because I want to avoid errors, the sounds are commented out of the code, so it won't throw an error if you're working on your project but you haven't added the sound yet. So you can see the comment here says remove comments to play sound effects, and here's this jump sound.play. So to remove the comment, that just means the little hashtag in front of the jump sound. So I'm just going to delete that. And then you'll see the jump sound turn green. And this code will play the jump sound if we have a jump sound in the player node. The $ here just refers to nodes that are part of this player node, or anything that's connected to a script. So whatever this looks like, your sound has to have the exact same name. So you can copy and paste or just recreate that. So I'm going to close this. So we're going to go to the player, and we just want to make this sound. So we're going to add a stream player 2D. So I'll create that. And we just need to match this name to our code. So we'll call this jump sound. And then we just add our stream over here. So I'm going to go to the empty, go to load, and go to audio, and get my jump sound. And then for this one, I'm going to set the volume to -3. So I want it to be louder than my background sounds. But I'm not going to turn autoplay on because I don't want it to automatically play. I want it to play when the player jumps. There's one other thing that we can change here. Well, we don't need to worry about. So max distance is how far away from the sound you'll still hear it. For our jump sound, we don't really need to worry about that because it's connected to our player. We're never going to be that far away from ourselves. So we can ignore that. The attenuation is how quiet it gets as you get farther away. You can change that. The default is this like linear thing. We don't really have to worry about that either. So we're just going to ignore those parameters and just give this a try. Okay, so now when I jump, I get a little jump. And there's a space for a land sound also. I haven't added that, but we can add that later. Okay. So yeah, I think that is everything. Trying to think if I skipped anything, but I think that's everything we need to do for our sound. So we can pause here, and you guys can work on adding some sounds for a little bit. In the second part of class, we're going to add some other objects into the scene. And so I'm going to get some more sounds to use for that. And I'm also going to get some more art to use for that. But I'm not going to do that as part of the demo because we have already looked at how to do that. So that's another thing that you could work on if you want to. The other things that we're going to have are, let's look at our scripts for a second. So in the scripts, you can kind of see the different types of things that you can add into the scene. We're not going to probably be able to cover all of them, but they all kind of work more or less the same way. So the ones that I'm going to talk about today are the collectible. So we need a sound to play when we collect an item. And we'll be able to do this with different types of items. There's also an obstacle that's static. That means it doesn't move. So this has a sound associated with it. If you run into an object, we'll add that in. There's also a moving obstacle. This is a much more complicated object with a bunch of different sounds, or actually just 2 sounds if it hits you and if it dies. So we'll go over that as well. If we have time, we'll also look at the checkpoint and the trigger scene. I don't know if we'll have time for those, but they pretty much work the same way. So yeah, we'll do that in the second part of class. So if you want to get some more sounds for that, you can work on that as well. And then we also need some art for that. So if you want to start working on it, I'm going to just use some art that I created earlier. So I'm going to use like this apple sprite sheet and this life sprite sheet and this obstacle that's like a little bloody flower and this little snake guy. So I'm not going to demo creating the art for those because we already know how to make art, but I will sort of go over how those things are designed. Anyway, I'm going to stop there and let you guys work on stuff for a bit.